Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on which part of the world you are. I'm here in Sydney, Australia, and I hope you guys are doing great. So, welcome to the channel. On October 7, 2023, Israel suffered one of the worst atrocities since Holocaust. And just a few days ago, on December 28th, a report came out about what happened to the women in particular, the rape victims of the terrorist atrocities that was conducted by Hamas on October 7th. This was published by New York Times, and this would be the primary focus of our today's discussion. And as we go through, some of the details will be very, very graphic, so I have to give you a bit of warning should you decide to stick around. So let's dive in. Screams without words: how Hamas weaponized sexual violence on October 7th. This was done after an interview of 150 people. And it starts with this at the very top. In a grainy video, you can see her lying on her back, dress torn, legs spread, vagina exposed. Her face is burned beyond recognition, and her right hand covering her eyes. So obviously this woman was gang raped, and perhaps she was burned alive. And we are just getting started. The sadistic nature of these atrocities is what we are going to discuss today. Now, of course, Hamas denied all the allegations that there were rapes conducted by these terrorists. They denied it. But when it comes to Islamic terrorism, rape, sadism, and barbarism, these are the themes that repeats over and over and over and over again. And in this particular report, it is so graphic that I think we have to talk about this report, this particular incident, for months, years, if not centuries. Okay, so let's move on. One family knew exactly who she was, the victim, Gal Abdus, mother of two from a working class town in central Israel, who disappeared from the rape that night with her husband, the rape party, the Nova festival. So obviously she and her husband went onto the festival, and she was murdered, like she was gang raped, burned alive, and of course her husband was murdered as well. As the terrorists closed in on her, trapped on a highway in a line of cars of people trying to flee the party, she sent one final WhatsApp message to her family: "You don't understand." This was the last message she sent to her family. Now, obviously, she was trying to flee. When she was witnessing these brutalities herself, she tried to escape. But of course, like I saw the footage that when the cars were trying to flee on the highway, there were these terrorists taking place. They were standing in the middle of the road, opening fire at the oncoming cars. And many cars, like the victims, were not only they were gunned down, but then the whole car was set on fire, so that these victims, they were burned alive. So obviously she saw some of these atrocities, and when she was witnessing these things, this was the last message she sent through. Based largely on the video evidence, which was verified by the New York Times, Israeli police officials said they believed that Miss Abdus was raped, and she has become a symbol of horrors visited upon Israeli women and girls during the October 7th attacks. Now it goes on that a 2-month investigation by the Times uncovered painful new details, establishing that the attacks against women were not isolated events, but part of a broader pattern of gender based violence on October 7th. Relying on the video footage, photographs, GPS data from mobile phones, and interviews with more than 150 people, including witnesses, medical personnel, soldiers, rape counselors, the New York Times identified at least 7 locations where Israeli women and girls appeared to have been sexually assaulted or mutilated. Now, I want to focus on this particular word, mutilated, because we're going to see some of these examples of mutilation in a bit. Okay, so like some of the kibbutz, like the Bari kibbutz, and yeah, some of the kibbutz, like there's a map that shows some of the kibbutz that were affected badly by these terrorists. 4 witnesses described in graphic detail seeing women raped and killed at 2 different places among Route 232, the same highway where Miss Abdus' half-naked body was found sprawled on the road at a 3rd location. And the Times interviewed several soldiers and volunteer medics who together described finding more than 30 bodies of women and girls in and around the rape site and in 2 kibbutz in a similar state as Miss Abdus. Legs spread, clothes torn off, signs of abuse in their genital areas, like mutilation. We're going to see some of the examples. The Times viewed photographs of one woman's corpse had emergency responders described in the rubble of a besieged kibbutz with dozens of nails driven into her thighs and groin. Dozens of nails. The Times also viewed a video provided by Israeli military showing 2 dead Israeli soldiers at the base near Gaza who appeared to have been shot directly in the vagina. Soldiers, they were shot. Where? At the vagina. Now, of course, Hamas denied the Israelis' accusation of sexual violence. And of course, the women, the United Nations and UN Women, they didn't even condemn, like they didn't even recognize that this was a terrorist attack by Hamas up until what? Bare 2 months. So we can understand the bias of UN Women and these UN organizations when it comes to exposing the hypocrisy. When we see terrorist attacks after terrorist attack happening in the name of religion, their justification is like, I saw a video message from Antonio, like the UN Secretary General. He was saying that October 7th didn't happen on October 7th, like he was referring to something in the past. In other words, he was condoning the violence at the initial stage. He was siding with those people who supported Hamas, the pro-Hamas rally. He was one of them, and he is the chairman of he was the Secretary General of the United Nations. Like he's the top guy. He was siding with the Hamas. This is the state of affairs when it comes to United Nations. Let's move on. So, investigators with Israel's top national police unit, Lagav 433, have been steadily gathering evidence, but they have not put to a number on how many women were actually raped, saying that most are dead and buried and they will never know. No survivors have spoken publicly. Obviously, who's gonna? Because these victims, they were murdered in many cases, like almost 99% cases, they were murdered. They were raped to death. And if they are not raped to death, of course, they were gunned down, they were burned alive, and so on and so forth. The Israeli police have acknowledged that during the shock and confusion of October 7th, the deadliest day in Israeli history, they were not focused on collecting semen samples from women's bodies, requesting autopsies, or closely examining crime scenes. At that moment, the authorities said they were intent on repelling Hamas and identifying the dead. A combination of chaos, enormous grief, and Jewish religious duties meant that many bodies were buried as quickly as possible. Of course, this is a religious rite. A ritual has to take place to properly bury these women or men or like the victims after they have been murdered. Most were never examined, and in some cases, like at the rape scene, where more than 360 were slaughtered in a few hours, the bodies were hurled away by the truckload. So many bodies. So they had to be taken to the burial sites. That has left the Israeli authorities at a loss of fully explaining to the families what happened to their loved ones in the final moment. Miss Abdu's relative, for instance, never received a death certificate. They are still searching for answers. Armed conflict is so chaotic, said Adil Haq, a law professor and war crime expert. People are more focused on their safety than on building crime case down the road. Like, it is a very chaotic environment. There are gunfires, there is chaos, there's confusion, nobody knows what's going on. Like, how can you can understand the volatility of the situation, how dangerous the operation was. So people were trying to find shelters, they were trying to take covers. Who knows, like even bullets fired by the Israeli soldiers, you might as well be one of the victims. Like, this is a deadly area. Who knows who is coming behind you, who is standing behind you. Okay, so let's move on. Screams without word. Shapir, a 24-year-old accountant, has become one of the Israeli police's key witnesses. She does not want to be fully identified, saying she would be haunted for the rest of her life if her last name was revealed. She attended the rape with several friends and provided investigators the graphic testimony. The rape, like the party, the Nova festival. She also spoke to the Times. In a 2-hour interview outside a cafe in southern Israel, she recounted seeing groups of heavily armed gunmen rape and kill at least 5 women. She said at 9 a.m. on October 7th, she was hiding under a low branches of a bushy tamarisk tree just off Route 232, about 4 miles southeast of the party. She had been shot in the back. She felt faint. She covered herself in dry grass and lay as still as she could. About 15 meters from her hiding place, she said she saw motorcycles, cars, trucks pulling up. She said that she saw about 100 men, most of them dressed in military fatigues and combat boots, a few in dark sweatsuits getting in and out of the vehicle. She said the men congregated around the road and passed between them assault rifles, grenades, and missiles, and badly wounded women. 100 men, and they had badly wounded women with them. It was like an assembly point. The first victim she saw, she said she saw was a young woman with copper color hair, like kind of silver, brown, golden, copper color hair. Blood running down her back. Blood running down her back. Pants pushed down to her knees. One man pulled her by the hair and made her bend over. Another penetrated her. Shapir said, like the witness was describing. And every time she flinched, he plunged a knife into her back. Every time she flinched in pain, he plunged a knife into her back. She said she then watched another woman shredded into pieces. While one terrorist raped her, she said another pulled out a box cutter and sliced off her breast. She said the man sliced off her breast. One continues to rape her, and the other throws her breast to someone else, and they play with it, throw it, and it falls on the road. Like the witness, like the Shapir, the accountant who witnessed this atrocity she was describing, that she sliced off her breast and gave it to someone, and they were playing with the sliced off breast on the road. She said the man sliced her face, and then the women fell out of the view. Around the same time, she said she saw 3 other women raped and terrorists carrying the severed heads of 3 more women. Severed heads of 3 more women. Shapir provided photographs of her hiding place and her wounds, and police officials have stood by her testimony and released a video of her with her face blurred, recounting some of what she saw. Yura Carroll, a 22-year-old security consultant, said he was hiding in the same spot, and he can be seen in one of the Shapir's photos. He and Shapir were part of a group of friends who had met up at the party. In an interview, Mr. Carroll said he barely lifted his head to look at the road, but he also described seeing a woman being raped and killed. Since that day, Shapir said she has struggled with a painful rush that spread across her torso, and she can barely sleep, waking up at night, heart pounding, covered in sweat. That day I became an animal. I was emotionally detached, sharp, just the adrenaline for survival. I looked at all these as if I was photographing them with my eyes, not forgetting any detail. I told myself I should remember everything. That same morning, about Route 232, but in a different location about a mile of southwest of the party area, Raj Cohen, a young Israeli who had also attended the raid and had worked recently in the Democratic Republic of Congo, training Congolese soldiers, said he was hiding in a dried up stream bed. It provided some cover from the assailant combing the area and shooting anyone they found. He said in an hour-and-a-half interview in Tel Aviv restaurant. Maybe 40 years from in front of him, he recalled, a white van pulled up and its doors flew open. Okay. He said they saw 5 men wearing civilian clothes, all carrying knives. As the vehicle stood, they opened the door. He then saw 5 men wearing civilian clothes. Okay. Now, in Gaza, there were 21,000 people were massacred, killed by Israeli bombing. Now, Israel has been demanding that how many of these people are terrorists. These numbers came out of the health ministry run by the Hamas, health ministry of Gaza run by the Hamas. So Israel was asking how many of these 21,000, the number that has been claimed by Gaza health ministry as the victims, as the casualties of this war. Israel was asking that how many of these innocent victims were terrorists. Well, they haven't been provided with one incident, one, that okay, one person was a terrorist. They haven't been given a concrete or even a vague number whatsoever as to how many of these innocent people were terrorists. So now you got this, that all carrying knives, like wearing civilian clothes, that they saw 5 men wearing civilian clothes, all carrying knives and one carrying a hammer, dragging a woman across the ground. She was young, naked, and screaming. All carrying knives. They all gather around her, Mr. Cohen said. She was standing up. They start raping her. I saw the men standing in a half circle around her. One penetrates, she screams. I still remember her voice, screams without words. Then one of them raises a knife, and they just slaughtered her. So they also, like the severed heads of 3 women, they also beheaded her. Soam Guetta, one of Mr. Cohen's friend and a fashion designer, said the two were hiding together in their stream bed. He said he saw at least 4 men step out of the van and attack the women, who ended up between their legs. He said they were talking, giggling, and shouting, and that one of them stabbed her with a knife repeatedly, literally butchering her. She ended up between their legs, and they were giggling. They were shouting, they were giggling. Now, the sadistic nature, entertaining violence, now, when we talk about the wars, when we talk about atrocities, we talk about the death. Let's say there is a war going on in Ukraine at the moment, Russia and Ukraine, right? There were, of course, lots of casualties as well, but have you ever heard babies being beheaded? Like, I saw video testimonies where, like, there was a 74-minute video that was shown to the journalists after October 7th massacre. And some of the journalists who witnessed these atrocities, like some of this footage was live streamed. Now they saw that these terrorists going into the house, people are having breakfast. The man, the father, he was stabbed in the eye. His eye was gouged out. They had a baby, like not a baby, a toddler, a boy and a girl. The boy, his hand was chopped off. The girl, her leg was chopped off. A woman, we will probably read it in a bit. Her womb, like her stomach, was cut open because she was pregnant to get the baby out of the womb. She was stabbed in the belly, and then it was sliced open. The baby was killed inside her womb, and it was sliced open to get the baby out of the womb. People are like families. There was one incident, again, you can you can see the testimonies of the people, the journalists who watched this 74-minute video. They found in one case, they found the two spines. Of course, it was tied to the back when they were burned together. These were probably members of the same family. One was of the younger age and another one was of the older age. Now imagine that the father or the son had to witness the burning of her own family member, the closest family member, and this is the last memory that they had before they died. Father and the son burned together, and this is the last memory that they had before they died. When it comes to this kind of sadistic behavior, as far as I am concerned, I haven't come across anything as vicious, anything as vile, anything as depraved, as utterly degenerate like this. Hours later, the first wave of volunteer emergency medical technicians arrived at the rape site. In interviews, 4 of them said they had discovered bodies of dead women with their legs spread and underwear missing, some with their hands tied by rope and zip ties, in the party area along the road, in the parking area, and in the open fields around the rape site. That means these women were probably dragged by the hair, and then either they were beheaded, of course they were raped, they were shot in the vagina, whatever it is. Zamal Waraki, a volunteer medic with the non-profit Zaka emergency response team, said he could not get out of his head a young woman in the rawhide vest found between the main stage and the bar. Her hands were tied behind her back. She was bent over, half naked, her underwear rolled down below her knees. Of course, she was raped. Now, one of the things that I should point out, that when it comes to these teachings of Islam, that what does Islam really teach? Right? I heard many of these Muslims say that Islam does not teach any of these things, that war booty, like there is a chapter in the Holy Quran that talks about distributing war booty, right? Chapter 8. But let's read a passage from chapter 4, verse 24. Surah Nisa, verse 24. We captured some women from the area of Authus who were already married, and we disliked having sexual relations with them because they already had husbands. So we asked the Prophet about this matter, and this ayah was revealed, forbidding women already married except for female slaves. Okay. Also forbidden are women already married except for those whom your right hands possess. Consequently, we had sexual relations with these women. So when Muhammad, like he was a caravan robber, obviously Muhammad used to loot caravans, right? He would attack people like the innocent civilians, like the Hamas did. So Muhammad would attack this kind of, like there were 3 Jewish tribes, Banu, like when Muhammad came to Medina in 622, when he was kicked out of Mecca and he went to Medina, there were 3 Jewish tribes, Banu Qurayza, Banu Kainuka, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qurayza. He would attack one of these communities or some other neighboring Jewish communities. And this is just one such incident. So these women had their husbands alive. And Muhammad had this divine revelation by which his soldiers then gang raped these women. Not only that, Let's read another one. The Ida of those in menopause and those who do not have menses. Like it is talking about chapter 65, Surah At-Talaq. Like the last one was Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 24. Gang raping women in front of their husbands. Right hand's possession. Now this one is chapter 65, verse 4. Surah At-Talaq, verse 4. Now this is talking about divorcing pre-pubescent girls. So chapter 65, verse 4. Mohsin Khan. Okay, now this is the English translation that I'm reading. Ida is the prescribed period for divorce. If you have doubts about their periods, it's 3 months, and for those who have no causes, they are still immature. Like if you are in menses, like adult women, that time is 3 months. Like after 3 months, you can rid of her. They are still immature. Their Ida is 3 months likewise. Even if they're immature, like we are talking about divorcing pre-pubescent girls. They are still immature. Divorcing pre-pubescent girls. And where are these pre-pubescent girls are coming from? So when Muhammad used to go on to this slaughtering and murdering rampage, obviously the men were slaughtered, and then the women and children were gang raped. And that is how they ended up with these children as their wives. Slaves, some of these children would become the wives, and that is how you got this divine revelation to divorce these pre-pubescent girls. Anyway, so let's go back to where we were. So now Yolim Rivlin, a member of the rapes production team who lost 2 brothers in the attack, said after hiding from the killers, he emerged from a ditch and made his way to the parking area east of the party around Route 232 looking for survivors. Near the highway, he said, he found the body of a young woman on her stomach, no pants or underwear, legs spread apart. He said her vagina area appeared to have been sliced open. Her vagina had been sliced open after she was raped. Probably she was torn by the legs so that her vagina, like her body, would rip apart into 2. Now, if you want to rape someone, if you want to kill someone, you can just simply, fire a bullet. But imagine the level of hatred that these people have manifested. These people have shown the level of sadism and barbarism. Was it necessary? Similar discoveries were made in 2 kibbutzim, Beri and Kfar Aza. 8 volunteer medics and 2 Israeli soldiers told Times that in at least 6 different houses, they had come across a total of 26 bodies of women and girls, naked, half naked, some mutilated, others tied up, and often alone. Now they're talking about 2 teenage girls in a room in Beri. One was lying on her side, he said, boxer shorts ripped, bruises by her groin. The other one was sprawled on the floor, face down, he said, pajama pants pulled down to her knees, bottom exposed, semen smeared on her back. Because the job was to look for survivors, he said, they kept moving and did not document the scenes. Neighbors of the two girls killed, who were sisters 13 and 16, again, these are girls, said their bodies had been found alone, separated from the rest of the family, like the verse that I have shown you. Divorcing prepubescent girls. Divorcing prepubescent girls. This is how this verse came into this holy book, Holy Quran. After the men were slaughtered, these girls were taken as hostages, like booty. These prepubescent girls, they are still immature, right? These prepubescent girls were then taken as booty after their family were massacred. And that's how our Holy Quran is laced with so many stories of divine mercy and wisdom. The Israeli military allowed the paramedics to speak with reporters on the condition that he not be identified because he serves in the elite unit. Okay, now this is one of the witnesses. And they are talking about many of the bodies they brought to the Shura medical base in central Israel for identification. Here, two witnesses said they saw signs of sexual violence. An architect called up as a reserve soldier to help prepare the bodies of female soldiers for burial. She said she has seen 4 with signs of sexual violence, including some with a lot of blood in their pelvic areas. Obviously, these girls were definitely mutilated. Like probably they were shot in the vaginas, or like they were too young. So when they're penetrated, their vagina was torn apart, whatever it is. Now this is going on, and there are some other similar cases that she said she has seen several bodies with cuts in their vaginas. Yeah, the stuff that I'm just discussing, like after they were raped, they're probably torn apart by their legs and underwear soaked in blood, and one whose fingernails have been pulled out. Fingernails have been pulled out, like the witness, like the journalist who saw the video, they said that the father was stabbed in the eye and his eye was gouged out. And one other testimony, like one of the journalists was saying that 2 boys, like 2 little toddlers, brothers, and their father was trying to save them, and then a grenade was thrown and the father died instantly, and the boy was begging that, why am I not yet dead? And the terrorist, that rapist, that sadist bastard who killed these people, then he went to the fridge and drank from a bottle of Coke. So the Israeli authorities have no shortage of video evidence from October 7th attack. They have gathered hours of footage from Hamas body cameras, dash cams, security cameras, mobile phones showing Hamas terrorists killing civilians, and many images of mutilated bodies. But Moshe Finzi, a deputy superintendent and senior spokesperson of Hamas National Police, said, we had 0 autopsies. Okay, in the aftermath of the attack, police officials said forensic examiners were dispatched to the Shura medical base to help identify the hundreds of bodies. Israel officials say around 1,200 people were killed that day. The examiners worked quickly to give the agonized families of the missing a sense of a closure, and to determine by a process of examination who was dead and who was being held hostage in Gaza. According to Jewish tradition, funerals are held promptly. The result was that many bodies with signs of sexual abuse were put to rest without medical examinations, meaning the potential evidence now lies buried in the ground. International forensic Experts say that it would be possible to recover some evidence from the corpses, but it would be very difficult. And then it goes on, like a colleague sitting next to him merits Ben, mayor, a police chief superintendent, like one of the kibbutz mayor, police superintendent said she believed that the brutality against women was the combination of two ferocious forces: the hatred of the Jews and the hatred for the women. Hatred of the Jews and also for the women. Many volunteers working for JACA, the emergency response team, the religious Jewish and religious Jews, and they operate under strict rules that command deep respect for the dead. So, like they were saying that how some of this evidence got destroyed. I did not take pictures because we are not allowed to take pictures, said Yoshi Landu, a Zaka volunteer. In respect, I regret it. In retrospect, I regret it. Now he was saying that I should have taken pictures. Okay. The trauma from sexual assault can be so heavy that sometimes survivors do not speak about it for years after several rape counselors said. Many people are looking for the golden evidence, the women who will testify about what happened to her. But don't look for that. Don't put this pressure on these women, said Oritz Sulzitnu, executive director of the Association of Rape Crisis Center in Israel. The corpses tell the story. Okay. The women in black dress, like Mr. Abdus, about whom we have been discussing at the very beginning, captured by the security camera mounted on her front door, shows her leaving home with her husband Nagy at 2:30 a.m. on October 7th for the party. Now, he was wearing jeans and black t-shirt. She was dressed in short black dress, a black shawl tied around her waist, and a combat boots. She was struck. As she struts out, she takes a swig from a glass. Her brother-in-law remembers it was Red Bull and vodka, and laughs. We got to live life like it is your last moment. That was her motto, her sister said. At uh, at daybreak, hundreds of terrorists closed in on the party from several directions, blocking the highway leading out. So they blocked all the highways getting out of the party. So their intention was to kill as many Jews as possible and as sadistically as possible. The couple jumped into their Audi, dashing off a string of messages as they moved. We are on the border, Miss Abdus wrote to her family. We are leaving. Explosions. Her husband made his call to the family, leaving a final audio message to his brother Nasim at 9:44 a.m. Take care of the kids. I love you. Gunshots rang out and the message stopped. Obviously, probably just before he was shot dead, he probably made the message. That night, Eden Wesley, a car mechanic, drove to the rape site with three friends and found Miss Abdus sprawled half naked on the road next to her burned car, about 9 miles north of the site. She did not see the body of Miss Abdus. She saw other burned cars and other bodies and shot videos of several, hoping that they would help people to identify missing relatives. Now, and she went on. Now, at the very end, what is the. Now, this goes on at the very end. Night after night, Miss Abdus' mother, Eti Barcha, lies in bed with the boys until they drift off, until they fall asleep. A few weeks ago, she said she tried to quietly leave their bedroom when the younger boy stopped her. Grandma, He said, I want to ask you a question. Honestly, she said, you can ask anything. Grandma, how did mom die? Miss Abdu's son was asking Miss Abdu's mom that how did mom die? I think this incident, this particular report has a lot to say about many of the victims in the last 1400 years. Many of these mothers who were obviously gang raped and murdered, sadistically murdered. Many of the boys were made orphans. I think this particular report has the potential to answer some of those questions. How did their moms die in the hands of these barbarians, these savages who killed human beings in cold blood and called it a religion, called it God's work? Their depraved behavior is so utterly degenerate, is so beyond any conscience. It's just shocking. I think we all the people in this world should fight against this evil that exists within our midst, that can kill another human being in such a way. I think someday the truth will shine, and people, many innocent victims, will get to know what happened to their grandmas, to their moms, to their forefathers. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch up with you on the next one. Bye for now.